I feel the need for speed. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I'm continuing my masculine feminine energies film breakdown series with a patriotic film, Top Gun. If you're not familiar with what I mean by masculine and feminine energies, I talk about this in all of my videos, but a brief summary. Masculine and feminine energies are energies that live within all of us. We all contain both energies. We all have a core energy. That's the energy we are most ourselves in. Most of the time it links up with our gender, but it doesn't always. We can be in wounded or healed versions of either of these energies. Each of these energies contain archetypes that we can tap into whenever we need to, and in order to have sexual polarity in a relationship, you need to have one partner in the masculine energy and one partner in the feminine energy. These opposite energies attract and same energies repel sexually. I apologize if you can hear any noise, but my neighbor decided that now was a good time for him to power wash his deck. I said deck. I'm gonna make sure I enunciated that properly because that'd be really painful if that's not what he was doing. Anyway, so with all the buzz about the new Top Gun movie, which I haven't seen, I decided to watch the original Top Gun movie because I hadn't seen that one either. I watched it for the first time for this breakdown. And I want to make a note, I mentioned this in my G.I. Jane breakdown, that while I have a huge amount of respect for people in the military, I have like zero knowledge about the military or anything like that. So I'm not going to be able to really make any commentary on anything, whether or not this film is actually realistic or really anything as far as military strategies or what life is like in the military or anything like that. I'm only going to be looking at this in terms of the masculine and the feminine energies in this film. So Top Gun focuses on Maverick, who's played by Tom Cruise, and he goes to this very elite flight school. And the thing about Maverick, I mean, he's very masculine. He exhibits a lot of amazing masculine qualities, and you see it right in the beginning of the film when Maverick actually risks his own life when he's actually running out of fuel in his plane to rescue another pilot. So that idea that the masculine is so driven to protect, to have someone else's back, to fight for people he cares about or fight for his cause, that's all signs of very healthy masculine energy. He has an ego problem though, which tends to be more masculine wounding. It's kind of that need to prove yourself, which we find out has a lot to do with the fact that his father was an amazing pilot, but his father had died in sort of suspicious circumstances. They kind of painted his father as being the one who made a mistake, but he didn't believe that was true, and we find out more information about that as the film goes on. But it's alluded to that Maverick is really almost flying to prove his father was a good pilot or restore his family name. Like he's got something to prove, as opposed to being in that grounded confidence, which gives him this ego problem. I have a whole video talking about ego versus soul, so I'm not going to get into that too much in this video. But the problem with somebody who's coming from a place of ego is they often make poor decisions because they're not making decisions based on their soul, they're making decisions based on their ego, which can sometimes be unsafe. And it's interesting because one of the other flight school students is Iceman, played by Kilmer, and Iceman is, I think it's kind of really interesting, his name, because Iceman is so masculine, and I think that name is so poignant because often when somebody contains only masculine energy, they can tend to feel a little bit cold, to feel a little bit stiff, unfeeling. He's not really cruel. I mean, he does have an arrogance to him, but it's more of a quiet confidence that he carries because he knows his skill, because he knows his ability. And he's not trying to prove himself. He's just being the best that he can be. But he does come across as if he doesn't really have much personality, and somebody who is solely in their masculine energy, even if it's just the healthiest masculine energy, but that's all they contain, and they don't actually have any kind of feminine flow, feminine emotions, anything like that, they can tend to feel very stiff and cold. So I think Iceman is a very appropriate name for him. And there's actually a really poignant scene in the locker room when Iceman basically tells Maverick that the way he flies is unsafe, that he's dangerous. And I think it's a really important point because we focus a lot, I focus a lot on my channel about talking about creating safety for the feminine. The masculine needs to create a safe space for the feminine in order for her to relax and to actually be able to surrender into her feminine energy. However, for men, if a man is in his healthy, grounded masculine energy, he's going to prefer to be around or surrounded by or work with other healthy masculine men. Because a man who's operating from ego, who is doing things again from a place of ego where he feels like he needs to prove something, acts maybe erratic, maybe gets a little bit irresponsible, even if it's not in the extreme, it's going to feel untrustable to the masculine, because the masculine is all about trust. Trust is of a huge priority for the masculine. So in order for a man to be able to work with, connect with, have a friendship with, or anything, build something with, fight something with, like that warrior energy. If you're gonna be a warrior with a man, you're gonna wanna be a warrior alongside a man who you have trust in. And a man who is in his ego, who is operating from that place of trying to prove himself, can often feel very unsafe, even for the masculine. Not necessarily in the same instance as the feminine, because the feminine will often feel like she may be harmed by the masculine. Whereas in this sense, when we're talking about two masculine beings, you know, whether they're gonna be warriors together or, you know, build a business together or, you know, anything really, the masculine will feel like he needs the other masculine men around him to have his back, to be able to fight alongside him. And it's kind of like, you know, the weakest link, you know what I mean? If somebody is operating not from a genuine place of truth and honesty and operating from a place of ego and trying to prove yourself and being erratic and not necessarily making the best decisions, that's going to feel unstable for the masculine. He's not going to be able to put his trust in another masculine man who's acting like that. And that's actually kind of a topic that comes up a lot throughout the film. And it's interesting how at the end of the film, Iceman makes a comment about, you're still dangerous, but you can be my wingman anytime. It's like, it's not that we need the masculine to not be dangerous, because in reality, the masculine can be dangerous. But when the masculine is a fighter, a warrior, has that drive to fight, that drive to protect, and it's coming from soul, and it's not coming from this ego place of needing to prove yourself, it feels safer. Even if it is quote unquote dangerous, it's gonna feel safer to the masculine, to the feminine. It's just gonna feel safer overall, which is why it's so important for masculine men to heal that part of themselves that gets them moving through their ego. You're never gonna get rid of your ego completely, but can help you work through your ego so you can actually get to your soul and get to your soul purpose, your soul truth, and because that's so important for the masculine in every area of his life. So it's alluded to that Maverick seems to have trouble settling down with a woman. He kind of is always fooling around with different women. You don't really see that so much, but it's always alluded to in the film. And I mean, he looks like Tom Cruise, so why wouldn't he, right? But at the end of the day, and I've talked about this in other videos, that need to kind of constantly go from woman to woman in the masculine tends to be a sign of some wounding in their own inner feminine, of not being able to settle down and make a commitment, to kind of always be on the lookout looking for the next best thing. That's usually a lot of feminine wounding. And for most masculine men, I know this is a controversial thing that I say, but for most masculine men, when they step into the fullness of their healthy masculinity, they're going to want to settle down with a feminine partner. This idea of a man running around with different women, that's not real masculine energy. Masculine energy is about finding his passion and purpose, and usually running around with a lot of different women is just a distraction from that. So oftentimes when you see men running around with a bunch of different women, it's usually because they're trying to distract themselves from something that they don't want to face in their own life, which Maverick obviously has some things that he's just not looking to face in his life. Issues he has with his father and trying to prove himself. He mentions at one point losing his mother, and so he's obviously has things that he's really not willing to face and not willing to work through. He meets Charlie, who is his flight instructor, and they have kind of an interesting dynamic going. She is actually operating from quite a masculine place throughout a lot of the film. And I think that's one of the reasons why they kind of struggle. They have a bit of a battle getting together. They have a flirtation in the beginning, but it's kind of a battle of who's gonna give in to who. And when Maverick finds out that Charlie is one of the flight instructors, you know, she has to carry herself in a certain way. She's in a profession where she's surrounded by men. She has to prove herself. She has to be in her masculine energy. I don't actually think that she's in wounded masculine energy, because she doesn't feel, at least the way I perceived it, she doesn't feel like she's really trying to prove herself. It feels more like she is very grounded and confident in what she does. I'm sure there is a slight element of needing to prove herself. I mean, any woman who's in that level of a masculine career has probably been through some stuff and had to prove herself a lot. So being in that kind of profession and having a little bit of masculine wounding in a woman is pretty normal. But it doesn't seem as if her work is coming from ego. It seems more like her work is coming from confidence. However, Maverick kind of likes to test her when she's at work and likes to challenge her. And she doesn't really like that challenge. And I think that's partly because when they're working together, they're both in masculine energy. But she's trying to be in a very grounded masculine energy, and Maverick is in a bit more of his cocky, slightly wounded masculine energy. So they're butting heads. I really do think that Charlie at her core wants to be feminine, because she seems the most relaxed when she does sink into her feminine energy. And the fact that she defaults to that when she's feeling her emotions is really a sign that that's really what her core energy is. When they get together for their first date, she kind of admits to him that she's looking for information that he has to benefit her career. You know, she kind of admits that she's really just interested in him for that. She's not letting her guard down with him at first. She's still in this masculine energy, and in that first date where they are at her house and he actually gets very vulnerable. He gets more talking about his mother, talking about his father. He gets more vulnerable, and she's really holding the space for him. So she's really still embodying the masculine energy in that sense. It's not really wounded, and he's not really in a wounded feminine energy in that moment. It's just he's the one who's more willing to be open and vulnerable and show his feelings and emotions, and she's more the one that's holding space for him. So they're in opposite energies because they're not sinking into their natural core energies. It's not flowing. They're not really coming together as much as they probably would if they were in their natural core energies. But it does bring them closer, and I do think that it cultivates more love, and I think it's a sign that you can cultivate love in any relationship. It's just the relationship that you're gonna have a sexual relationship with. That's where you need your core energies to be opposite, and you need to be in those core energies in order to have sexual polarity. But those moments where this masculine man is sinking into his feminine vulnerability and the feminine is holding space for him using her inner masculine, those moments can be really wonderful to cultivate love. They just aren't necessarily the moments where you're gonna feel that real sexual urge for each other. And it's actually in the moment where Charlie basically confesses to Maverick that the reason why she is so hard on him and the reason why she's not more agreeable with him when they're working together is because she's falling for him and she doesn't want everybody to know. And it's that moment that she's vulnerable and she lets her guard down and admits her feelings. That's the minute that his inner masculine kicks in and they become sexually polarized to each other. It's not that she needs to be weak, it's the fact that she's willing to let her guard down with him. She has been so strong and in her masculine and a bit guarded with him, which is understandably so because of their situation and because of them working together. However, that minute that she's willing to be vulnerable and admit her true feelings, that's the moment that the two of them become attracted to each other, because she's now sinking into her feminine emotions and he's able to then step into his masculine strength. Now, Goose is Maverick's RIO. I'm not really sure what that even means. They mentioned it a bunch of times. Basically, he's kind of his backup guy and he's his best friend. They're like brothers. And we meet Goose's wife, played by Meg Ryan, and she is so cute in this film. She is such a feminine being. She is so, like, she's not a main character in this movie, but just a little snippet, like she has a son, like they have a kid together. She's so like fun and playful and flirty, and you know, she's just like, take me to bed now or lose me forever. I mean, she's just so fun and playful. It's such a beautiful feminine quality. Charlie obviously picks up on that, and she ends up using that line with Maverick later. It's kind of like seeing a woman that much in her feminine has actually inspired Charlie, who spends most of her life in her masculine. It's kind of like inspired her and given her permission to sink into her feminine and kind of be vulnerable and be more playful. And on the flip side, after Goose passes away, which is obviously a emotional part of the film, when Maverick is going through that and he's dealing with the fact that he's lost essentially, you know, someone who was like a brother to him, the masculine men are basically kind of telling him to let it go. Everyone's telling him to let it go, to move on, to not express your emotions, just cover it up, because the masculine doesn't really like to feel emotions. The masculine doesn't really want to feel those emotions. They want to get back to their direction and their purpose. And even when Maverick talks to Charlie, she's operating more from a masculine, like, it's not your fault. I saw, like, she's trying to talk to him in a very logical masculine way, which can be helpful at times, but it wasn't really giving him permission to be able to relax and feel into his emotions. It actually wasn't until Maverick goes to see Carol. And just actually before he even actually connected with Carol, when he sees the photo of Goose's family and he's approaching Carol, that's when he gets to release his emotions. And Carol shifts very much into mother energy in that moment. Now, she is a mother, but she was much more playful in her maiden energy before. And now she's obviously becoming a single mother now that she's lost her husband. But the fact that she is so nurturing and comforting to Maverick in that situation and is reassuring him of how important Goose was to him. But the fact that Carol is so loving and nurturing to Maverick, even though she's suffering and she's going through this tragic loss, the fact that she's so nurturing to him, that's one of the beautiful things about that, the mother energy when it comes to divine feminine energy, is it can actually give people permission to release emotions. And I think that gives Maverick the permission to be able to actually cry, to release what he was dealing with, because having all those emotions pent up in him from being around people who were so much in their masculine and telling him to stay in his masculine, it wasn't allowing him to feel through those emotions. And in being in the presence of a feminine woman who had that nurturing divine mother energy, really just allowed him to just sort of start releasing those, which I think is really a beautiful, poignant part of the film. Now with Charlie and Maverick, they seem to never really be able to kind of come together, because she is so used to being in her masculine energy. She's used to being in her head. I think she really enjoys sinking into her feminine energy, but she's not fully able to do that too often throughout the film. When she does, that's when they get together. Because Maverick is so masculine that a woman who is that much in her masculine is going to repel him. There's a really great moment where she's trying so hard to help him. She's trying so hard to talk to him, to reassure him. It's coming from a headspace. It's not coming from her body. It's not coming from her warm, nurturing energy, which is kind of what he needs in that moment. She's basically saying, like, if you need my help, if you need my help, if you need my help, which is a very masculine way of approaching it. And Maverick is basically like, if I needed your help, I would have asked for it. He's now not seeing her in that moment as a feminine being. He's not seeing her as a feminine partner, because she's very much in her masculine. And in a workspace situation, that can be great, in a workspace or co-workers, but the two of them are trying to come together as romantic partners. And that's where it's just not gonna work. When you have two masculine partners, they're not going to be able to come together sexually, because there's going to be a disconnect there. So it's not necessarily like anything that Charlie is doing is wrong, so to speak. It's just not going to work if they want a romantic connection. She's still in that energy that she needs to be in when she's his co-worker, and she's not fully sinking into her feminine, which is why they have their moments, but they never really seem to kind of really come together. And another great scene is when Maverick goes to see Viper, who's, you know, one of the team leaders, I guess he is. I don't really know anything about rankings, so. But he's sort of the older, wiser guy who was actually flown with Maverick's father, knew Maverick's father, and they have a great conversation about like what Maverick's next move should be. And that is really interesting, because he has a very grounded leadership, and he comes across very fatherly, not telling him what to do as a leader, but essentially guiding him, giving him options, and letting Maverick make his own decision. Which is a really great example of the fact that masculine leadership does not always have to be telling you exactly what to do in every moment. It can also be a grounded, stable presence of giving you options and letting that person make their own decision. And that's a way, I mean, I think we need more masculine leadership like that. I mean, it's masculine leadership guiding other people to tap into their inner masculine and learn how to lead themselves, which in turn will help them to lead others. And I think that that scene is a really great example of that, because he's not really just giving him an order, which, you know, in military situations would be what you would do, but he's actually being that very grounded presence of basically telling Maverick what his options are and letting Maverick make the decision for himself. This film has a lot of really great representations of masculine energy. I think this is a really great example of seeing where a man can be very masculine and he can have a lot of really healthy masculine traits, but he can also have some wounding that is holding him back from stepping into the fullness of his masculine. And in the course of this film, that's really kind of what Maverick is doing, is he's working through some of those things that he needs to work through in order to step into the fullness of his masculine. And I think this film is a really great example of that. So I highly suggest after you watch this video that you watch this film if you haven't already seen it, or even if you have, see if you can pick up on some of the things that I mentioned in this video. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up. Be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you have any thoughts on this film or any suggestions for other films, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. I love your suggestions. I'll be doing mini film clip breakdowns of this film on my TikTok, so be sure you subscribe to me there. Details are in the description box below, along with details to my online course, Feminine Radiance, if you'd like to learn to tap into your feminine energy. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.